Hello there. This one is called Shamanic Encounters. So I invite you to come on this walk with me. And I'm going to have a little chat with you about something that happened for me yesterday. So yesterday I had the opportunity to meet someone completely new to me. We'd only ever met once in a meeting, and we're both shamans, and I was recommended to meet this person by someone I'd received some very helpful healing from. And so I'm not going to tell you anything about the person's shamanic qualifications or anything like that. I'm just going to go straight into it. So after a while, we started to talk about fasting, intermittent fasting, and dry fasting. Now, the first time I'd ever come across dry fasting, it was about 35 years ago actually, and it was someone who is following a Native American tradition. And when he mentioned this to me all those years ago, my immediate reaction is, that's insane, because I've been very much fed the official story about what humans can and can't do, and I remember learning a long time ago that humans can only survive for a few days without water and for a few weeks without food, and I genuinely believed that was the case. But this person all those years ago had done an experience with no food and no water, and the no water had gone on for more than a week. And I was thinking, no, it's impossible. So you can imagine my surprise when the conversation turned to dry fasting, and I listened to his experiences. And I do want to add, this is a very sensible, sound person who knows what he's doing and acts accordingly. So there was plenty of preparation before this happened, a number of fasts with water over a period of time, and gradual preparation until it reached the point where he was ready to do it. So what he did is he did a few days preparing, drinking water and prune juice for its cleansing and clearing properties, clearing the body out, and then went into the fast, and has done this on a number of occasions, and actually no food and no water went on for a total of 9 days, which, even as I'm saying these words, I find it quite shocking, because I'm very attached to eating and drinking, like many of us are. And he explained in quite a bit of detail what happens. And the very simple thing to say is that when people do this dry fast, they are plunged into what really is the mother of all healing experiences. And the body makes use of this opportunity it's being given, and all sorts of wonderful results occur. So I'm going to go a little bit into this now. And this is very much what I learnt yesterday from a practitioner who's talking from a significant amount of experience. So, as it's been explained to me, when we eat, and this first bit comes as no surprise at all, when we eat, one of the things that happens to us is that insulin is going to be released, and the whole load of metabolic processes go into action to digest all the food. Now, when we stop doing this, this gives all these metabolic processes an opportunity to rest. And this is the first gift, because of course it requires a lot of energy to do all the things that we normally do to maintain ourselves in this way. But what I didn't know is that when we eat, there are particular hormones which become deactivated, particularly the hormones for growth and repair and healing. So by simply stopping what we normally do, which is to eat and even to drink, what that does is that allows these hormones to be fully activated, and the body goes into this most extraordinary self-cleansing, self-healing process. And there's a phenomenon which I have heard of. It's called autophagy. Very fancy, peculiar term. And what this is talking about is that the body has got white blood cells, phagocytes, macrophages in particular, and what happens is that these very helpful white blood cells, now that all these appropriate hormones have been kicked in, they actually have the power, and they go around, and a lot of people don't realise this, but everyone's got what are the very beginnings of cancer in their body. That's slightly abnormal cells, and it's no problem, because what normally happens is they are simply dealt with by the body. But when you do a treatment like this, you get the mother of all cleansings, and all of these cells in the body which are abnormal are gobbled up, and all their waste products are removed. So it means you have this fantastic opportunity to give your body the most thorough cleanse you can imagine. So that's autophagy. So it's literally any toxins, any abnormalities, anything that's not exactly right in the body, anything that is contrary to the body's needs, is literally processed, detoxed, removed, cleansed. So that is extraordinary in its own right. Now, something else that happens, which I do find even more fascinating, is that all the cells of the body contain mitochondria. And mitochondria are absolutely fascinating. They are generally regarded by biologists to be organelles, that's components within the body. And what they do is they literally take the oxygen that is in the blood and the sugars, which is also in the blood and in the cells, and it turns them into energy, and that's how we have the energy to live. Now, it seems that when you do any kind of a fast, and I do mean any kind of a fast, then the great benefit that you have is you will start to increase production of mitochondria and the body cells. So this literally means that the most important parts of your body cells, you get more of them, which means you can create more energy, which means you have more life and more vitality. And this is, of course, an incredible gift. So that's really exciting. And just to go into it a little bit, because I do find it fascinating being a microbiologist, but it appears that these mitochondria are very closely related to bacteria, and so it seems that historically at some point in our development as human beings we entered into a beneficial relationship with these organisms, which then became part of us, and they are such an essential part of us. That's how we get our energy now. So I just find that personally fascinating. So there's that. And the next one really blows me away, which is that there is the opportunity with the growth hormone and these repair hormones being activated, that there's another really big benefit, which is in the brain. We get what is neurogenesis, we get new brain cells produced. And this is all the result of taking a break from what we spend a significant part of every day doing, eating. So you've got increased energy from more mitochondria in all your body cells. You've got increased neurons, nerve cells in the brain, and you've got a really good clear out of everything in the body that you'd be better off without. And these are all the benefits which I've become aware of by being immersed in this conversation, listening to someone who wasn't just speaking about something he'd watched on YouTube. He was actually talking about personal experience and a significant amount of it. So I found this conversation has been very provocative. It's given me a lot of food for thought. Funny phrase to use. And the following was then mentioned, which is that it takes a lot of preparation to do this, clearly, and great benefits, but to put it into more of a conventional context of people, one of the things that is something that we can all do is intermittent fasting, and this is something I like to do very much myself. I like to have a really long gap between the last food of the first of day one and the first food of day two. I like to put my breakfast off as long as possible and have a really good gap. And the fact that I'm doing that means that I'm having all these benefits. The growth hormones kicking in and the hormones for repair and regeneration all kicking in. And it means that actually what is going on for me is I'm having a little rejuvenation on a daily basis. But then there's something else which is particularly significant too, which I want to mention, which is it's to do with developing flexibility, because we've got two processes. One is the conventional one of the digestion of the carbohydrates, and the other one is ketosis, which takes place when we're not digesting carbohydrates. So when you have a situation where every day you are experiencing your conventional digestion, then the other process, the ketosis, it means to say, because that's where you can literally metabolize fats stored in the body, this means that we become much more flexible, which is another very useful thing to have. And if this was all I had to say, I would think, well, this is a pretty interesting conversation I've had, but what I find is a really good conversation will catalyse a lot of realisations, and this is certainly the case for me, because I became aware of the fact that quite some time ago I used to live on 225 acres of land in the river valley in northeast Lancashire, and when I did that, the internet pretty much didn't exist. It was so long ago, hard to imagine now, isn't it? It did exist, but for most people it wasn't a common thing, and living with no mains services, and especially no mains electricity, meant that it wasn't even a realistic option for most of us who lived there. And also no TV, so just no screens of any kind. So living for the vast majority of 4 years with no screens of any kind in my life, that was an incredibly beneficial thing, and being in nature every day, like we are right now, so beneficial. So then I started to realise how my life has become, and how, like most people, I spend significant amounts of time on devices every day and all the rest of it. And I thought, my goodness me, just look how things have changed. And I'm going back into the conversation because I thought I'd ask the question. So, doing the 9-day dry fast, what kind of activities? And the answer was really surprising, because actually, rather than being outside, chose to be in his own home and didn't go out at all, didn't go anywhere. Which means reduction of inputs. One of the things I'm aware of is so many people, and I definitely include myself in this in more recent times, have reached a point where they are just constantly inputting information into their systems. And I certainly have been staying with people where they wake up to a radio alarm. So there's an alarm clock making a noise, and suddenly the radio's on immediately, and they spend their entire day with input, never a moment to think, never a moment to just be, never a moment to consider anything, never a moment to feel, just a constant barrage of sensory input. And I realised that that's what he was explaining. He was explaining that no screens, no reading, no radio, no TV, nothing. The opportunity to be with yourself. But even more so, no going out, not even into nature, just being with yourself. And an inevitable question arose for me, I'm sure it's arisen for you too. What about stuff coming out of the body? Because you're not drinking, you're not eating. How are you managing? And to my utter amazement, he said he would go for a wee twice a day. Now, I think that's extraordinary. But then he explained, because what happens is the oxygen, what we're breathing, combines with the hydrogen from the fat cells and forms water. So the body actually creates its own water. And I was pretty blown away by this, and he reminded me of something really obvious. We all know that camels go through the desert for a long time without water, and how they do it. And I think I had this silly idea that, well, they must have a lot of water stored in their body. Well, they don't. What they have is they have a lot of fat cells. So the fat cells contain the hydrogen in the fats, combined with the oxygen makes water. So that's actually how the camels survive in the desert. They literally create their own water from the breathing and from the fats, and that's what he was doing as well. And that's how he was able to stay hydrated all that time and get such an extraordinary healing result. So this brought me to the realization that so much of the time, if we're talking about or thinking about healing, well, what do you do? I do this, I do that. And here's someone who has actually adopted completely the opposite philosophy, which clearly works. Healthy person. What he does is he stops everything. No eating, no drinking, no smoking, no screens, no reading, no going out. And it then does obviously lead to this question, which I'm sure has occurred to you. So what do you do? 9 days of doing apparently nothing. But of course, these 9 days are the opportunity to process, to digest, to feel, to reflect, to consider your life. which is something that most people never give themselves the opportunity to do. And I feel that what he's done by bringing this subject up to my conscious awareness in this way is the toxicity that is created by never having the time to really be. And I have done a vision quest quite some time ago now, and that was 8 days on my own. That's the other thing, it's on his own, no human beings stimulate him in any way whatsoever. And that's why I had 8 days being completely on my own. But unlike him, I was eating and drinking, but there were no screens, none of the distractions in that way, which is great. And yeah, then I had a weekend of people around because I was staying on someone's land. Then I had another 8 days of going deeply within. But I realise now that this idea of taking it so much further than I've ever been, which is say, yes, do good preparation beforehand, plenty of smaller duration events until you are completely ready for it, then doing the 9 days. But here's another thing which he added to the conversation, which I feel is highly significant too, which is, on one of the times he was doing this, he got to day 6 and he realised he was feeling very proud of himself that he'd reached day 6. This certainly wasn't the first time he'd done this, but when that happened to him, he then realised, I've got caught up in pride, and I actually don't feel that's helpful. So he actually broke his fast that time, so he could release himself from the attachment to the pride in having achieved 6 days of his 9-day fast. So I feel that's a very important thing to add to all this, which is when we are engaged in these spiritual practices, it's so helpful if we can avoid that particular pitfall. So many people who meditate fall into this pitfall. It's even called spiritual pride, this sense of superiority. Oh, look at me, I'm meditating every day, isn't that great, aren't I wonderful? And the antidote to that is just to let go and just return to acceptance, humility, appreciation, and all those things. So this conversation which I had yesterday has provoked so much contemplation within myself, and I've certainly been given a new possibility to consider, which is the idea of dry fasting. But perhaps more important for me, it's been to understand that intermittent fasting is for everyone. It's a great skill to develop. So very approximately 16 hours not eating, 8 hours eating. You don't have to be rigorously sticking to that. It might be 14 hours of not eating and 10 hours of eating, but your point is you've got the majority of the day not eating, the minority of the day eating. That is the point behind it. And so I'm incredibly grateful for the Shamanic Encounter that has led to me walking through this land and making this film, and just feeling so much appreciation for being out here in the nature and looking at those lovely foxgloves and that hazel hedge and the nettles in the flower and the docks and everything else, and to realise that one of the best ways we can heal is to stop. Simply to stop doing, eating, drinking, smoking, socialising, partying, screening, reading, whatever, and give ourselves the time to rest, to allow the body to heal. And this is why the green medicine is very good for healing the body, because it forces a person to stop. I remember someone coming on the green medicine retreat, they spent most of the 3 days lying down short amounts of speaking, but mostly they were lying down. And I soon realised that this is something the person has so little experience of, so little time to actually be. So that's why that particular method works. And there are so many other methods that you can use which all rely upon stopping. And indeed did see a healer recently and experienced Tibetan pulsing, and after that session the body was put into a state of calmness and the impulse to rest and to stop. But the excitement of gathering that intermittent fasting is a wonderful way to heal, and that there is this real road which is just to stop and to actually dry fast for a period of time after you're very well prepared and have had lots of preparatory experiences before you actually take that step. That can make such an extraordinary difference to your state of being, and it can actually be a gift to yourself, which then means that you're able to be of service to others in a way that perhaps you wouldn't be able to be otherwise. So I'm just going to finish with a shot here of these lovely. So thank you very much. Please like, comment, subscribe, activate notifications, and if you wish to contribute, the PayPal link is in the description. All the love to you.